Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Football. What?
Who would like to try a free macaroon? Come on down. Tonight on The Profit.
Now I'm the macaron queen.
One woman's quest to become macaroon royalty. What are we shooting for? Why don't you tell me?
You're shooting for the moon.
Has resulted in a perfect dessert.
This is caramel chocolate.
Oh my God, that's so good.
But her hands-on business plan is wrecking her health.
Can you hold on one second? Are you sweating? Are you
Yes,
okay?
I had a heart surgery 2 years ago.
And creating an obligation for her daughter to fulfill. Are you happy, yes or no?
If you ask my husband,
Nina.
he'd say no.
If she can't learn to trust, are we using a recipe book?
No, the
Waiting
recipe
for a
is
mixer.
here.
Her empire will never grow.
Oh, I'm 139. I have to go.
Okay. You're not dizzy, are you?
Nina, you see how aggravating this is?
I'm Marcus Lemonis, and I risk my own money now. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm on my way to Perimeter Mall, and I'm here to see Macaroon Queen, which is a very small startup in the dessert space. It's clear to me that Macaroon Queen has a good business model on a small scale. But this particular product possesses all the qualities needed to actually become a direct-to-consumer product and a big wholesale product. They want to grow, but they want to grow profitably.
Princess cake, 2 of the creme brulees.
I love French macaroons. I would almost call myself a macaroon snob.
How are you, Marcus?
Hi, I'm Nina. Nice to
Nina?
meet you. Yes.
Pleasure to meet you, Finia.
Are you mom?
Yes.
Okay. This is a really beautiful display.
Thank you.
Look how colorful it is.
We wanted to make a place where macaroons were in the forefront.
Where did the idea to come from?
Well, it's a French cookie, and the origin is over 300 years
Are
old.
you guys French?
No. My real father is part European, but mom is Iranian.
Okay, cool.
I took 2 classes in Paris.
You went to macaroon making?
Yes. Now I'm the macaron queen.
Okay, I thought you were the macaroon queen.
No, I'm the princess. I'm the daughter.
Is this one of the hardest pastries in the world to make?
I would think, yes. It's called the impossible cookie. People always say, I tried it at home, it didn't come out right. So mom knew from reading these books why it's not coming out right. She condensed and slowly filtered her recipe.
And what's a busy day here, dollar-wise?
1,700,
What's a slow day?
400.
Now these days, everybody sell macaron for $3, but we sell them for $2 a piece.
I'm going to try a box of 25. I'm going to do taste testing. Red velvet?
Yes. Champagne. Key lime. French raspberry.
£7,000, which
So I'm gonna
includes
give
the
you my
trade up
honest
to a Euro
opinion.
6 vehicle.
Please.
And you could get an extra
I actually think this is the
£2,500
best macaroon
towards
I've
running
ever had.
costs if you go electric.
By a
The
lot.
scheme is now even
These
easier
had
to
a-
qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50
feel
employees.
to it without
Right.
collapsing.
So,
The
I'm
flavors
gonna
were
search
very
TFL
pronounced.
scrappage.
And then I thought the fillings had their own personality to them.
Thank you.
As a potential investor, I need to get feedback. So I'm going to start bringing people in to come try them. Do y'all have a tray?
Yes.
Who would like to try a free macaroon? You got to give me feedback. Come on down. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Pick any flavor?
I'm going to get the chocolate.
Have you ever had a macaroon before?
Oh, yes. This is out of this world.
Is it too hard, too
Oh,
soft?
no, it's a winner. It's not too sweet. I might be a tough critic because I don't usually eat sweets. Man, that's good.
It's yummy, soft, rich.
Too soft?
No. Medium soft and good.
£7,000.
I think every macaroon is
to trade up
different
to a
depending on
Euro
who
6
bakes
vehicle.
them.
How much do you think that
you
one?
could get an extra
$3 to
$2,000.
$5.
Separate from me loving desserts, I like the idea of entering into a space that isn't widely distributed. And there's something different about these desserts because they're small, they're really tasty, and you don't see them everywhere.
It does look elegant.
Why doesn't your
online.
color scheme here match the...
Actually, this color, they made a mistake because it's supposed to be Tiffany blue. And it came up the
What
same.
I wanted to mention is
You
hearts.
just grabbed your mom's hand,
Yes,
telling
I
her to
did.
be quiet.
No, I wanted to insert a fact.
And tell her to be quiet. Is this your only child?
Yes, you can tell.
Yeah,
I
sure,
really
right?
like you.
I
Well,
knew this would happen.
Yeah,
I'm
but-
screwed.
I would almost describe Nina and her mom's relationship as almost two sisters. They really do respect each other. And you can tell by spending time with them that they both bring something very different to the table. Do you do everything she tells you to do?
No.
Not when it comes to my business. No,
Is it your business?
our business.
I've taken over since her heart surgery.
I had a heart surgery 2 years ago. I had been sick with heart problem since I was 7. One day in the bakery, I fall. And I called her, and she called ambulance, and I go to the hospital. So she
How scary was that?
Very scary.
Business now.
We've shifted roles. I essentially, not in the food industry, opened our commissary kitchen. I'm not a chef. I'm not a baker.
But you did it to do your mom the right thing.
I did.
Inside of every business, there's a story of why they got in the business, how they got there, and the troubles that they've had. And the fact that Phinia has had real health scares puts a lot of pressure on the business.
Nina designed the kiosk.
Beautiful.
She was in fashion when she was younger.
I started as a designer. I was designing for a manufacturer. So he had like 12 labels. And that's what
International distribution or
yes,
just
international.
You should be very proud.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
The famous five were discussing their next adventure to Cardiff. Let's visit the Millennium Centre, said Dick. The National Museum, added Julian. The castle, cried Anne. Dick jumped up. We'd better leave now. Cardiff's so far away. Relax, said George. It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pyjamas. London to Cardiff in as little as 1 hour 42 minutes. So adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Fastest train from Paddington to Cardiff Central. Terms and conditions apply.
A push to ban sales of assault weapons has failed in the Virginia State Senate. In the end, Governor Northam lacks support from moderate Democrats. TJ Coutini has more on the story.
John, senators voted to shelve the bill for the year and asked the State Crime Commission to study the issue, an outcome that drew cheers from a committee room packed with gun advocates. 4 moderate Democrats joined Republicans in the committee vote rejecting legislation that would have prohibited the sale of certain semi-automatic firearms, including popular AR-15 style rifles, and banned the possession of magazines that hold more than 12 rounds. The bill was a top priority for Northam, a Democrat who's campaigned heavily for a broad package of gun control measures.
2 separate airliners have brought home 340 American passengers who had been quarantined over coronavirus fears on a cruise ship in Japan. 14 of those who returned have tested positive for the virus. China's central bank has rolled out more support for the economy to help businesses struggling with the fallout from the outbreak. I'm John Trout.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. This newscast is brought to you by SEI. Built on advanced technologies and 50 years of innovation, SEI offers asset managers a comprehensive and flexible operations outsourcing platform. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. China's central bank provided medium-term funding to commercial lenders and cut the interest rate it charges for the money, a move widely anticipated by analysts to cushion the economy from the coronavirus epidemic. The move gave financial markets a boost, with China's CSI index gaining 2.25%. U.S. financial markets are closed for the President's Day holiday. European shares rose after China's advance. The FTSE in London gaining 0.2%, the DAX in Germany up almost 0.2%. The Nikkei fell 0.7% after Japan said GDP fell more than 6% last quarter, raising the specter of a recession in Japan. The coronavirus will be high impact but short-lived, according to Oxford Economics' Louis Cao in Hong Kong. He says the next 2 weeks will be critical as Chinese consumers resume their daily routines.
As China starts to, go to the factories and the shops again, will they be able to contain the spread? We still assume that indeed it is going to be very high impact but short-lived, but we have to acknowledge that there are a lot of uncertainties around at the moment.
For years, Facebook lobbied governments against imposing tough regulations. Now it's pleading for new rules for the good of its business. In an op-ed in the Financial Times on Monday, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg wrote, "If we don't create standards that people feel are legitimate, they won't trust institutions or technology." Former U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman David Reuter has died at the age of 90. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
So this is a story we've been following very closely. It's about the mutual fund business, but it's also about the increasing power of the big three. Vanguard, certainly one of them. Annie Massa has been following this so closely. She's got a story in this week's edition in the finance section. Tell me what's going on with Vanguard, not just for index and passive investing anymore.
Yeah, Vanguard announced plans to make its first real foray into private equity with a fund that's going to be managed by an outside firm called HarborVest Partners.
All right, this feels like a big deal. It feels like this is one of the holy grails on all sides of this, which is more people getting into what has largely been a pretty exclusive club. Why do they want in?
Holy Grail is exactly the right way of describing it, I would say. I think if you're Vanguard, you see that there's so much more focus on private markets. Recently, fewer companies are going public now, and you can frankly earn higher fees in that area. So if you're Vanguard and you're a big index fund provider, I mean, a giant of indexing, truly, the world's second largest asset manager, and you typically compete on costs, they see a window where they can compete on costs for PE funds while still earning higher fees on those funds than they would on cheap index funds.
All right, let's talk about that, because the fees, you start to get into one of the most interesting aspects of all of this at a time, and you know this better than anyone, where fees are going down, 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 all the way to free. We're talking about an industry where the fees are, by most accounts, pretty extraordinary. 2 and 20 is the way that private equity funds, as you well know, charge 2% annual fees, 20% of profits. That seems like mind-blowing in the world of low fees. How do they square all that?
Yeah, compare that 2 and 20 to a cheap S&P 500 tracking fund that might just charge 3 basis points, and that's it. So, I mean, there's obvious appeal on the fee side for a firm like Vanguard. They will, first of all, only offer this to institutions in the beginning phases, smaller institutions like endowments and nonprofit foundations, but their aspirations are clear to bring this to a wider audience, and they might be able to do that through their advisor channels. They've got a growing network and a huge network of advisors who could eventually, if it were allowed, bring these kinds of investments to their clients.
And so this isn't the first time that a big money manager has sort of flirted with this idea, right? Remind us of the history here.
Yeah, actually, I mean, going back to around 2001, Vanguard itself tried to make a push into private equity, bringing in Hamilton Lane for a fund of funds. And in the fallout from the dot-com bust, they just abandoned that effort, and they said that they couldn't raise enough assets for it. But you've also seen BlackRock, again, world's biggest asset manager, $7 trillion in assets. 2/3 of that comes from its index product suite. They've also made a bigger push into alternatives and private equity specifically. They launched this fund called Long-Term Private Capital that takes stakes in private companies about 2 years ago. Now, that could be seen as a cautionary tale in some ways because it hasn't progressed as quickly as they initially said it would. So that shows some of the struggle for an outsider trying to get into private equity, such a relationships-based kind of arena. Right.
You fast forward to now, the private equity industry, you point this out in your story, has $1.5 trillion or so just in dry powder, $3-4 trillion in total assets under management, names like Blackstone and KKR and Carlyle. At the same time, those names, the Blackstones and the Carlyles, they're trying to get to some of these same investors. How is that going in terms of getting to the retail holy grail.
That's right. So you're seeing this real convergence. At the same time that Vanguard is trying to sneak into private equity, the Blackstones and KKRs are trying to see how they could get their private equity vehicles into the hands of more investors, more retail investors even. Traditionally, private equity is walled off from all but the institutions and the high net worth individuals.
Accredited investors. You got to be accredited to get in, right?
Exactly. And what Blackstone would like to see, what the private equity giants would like to see, are some of those restrictions being loosened, and they've made that case in front of the SEC, and the SEC is looking at it and assessing whether it would make sense to ever open up private equity style investments to a larger audience, because I think that they fear that an average investor could be missing out on those returns if they're increasingly walled off from that realm.
Right. Critics and skeptics look at that and say, well, maybe there's a reason the retail investors aren't in there. It's much less liquid in many ways. It's much more opaque. The transparency just isn't there. What do you make of those arguments as you talk to people? That's exactly right. So investor advocates say, wait a minute, this is really a sales push on the private equity side. It can be hard enough for an average investor to just sort out the right mix of stocks and bonds in a portfolio without getting involved in something as opaque as private equity, and something where they might not understand the complexities, might not be as happy with the longer lockup periods. So there is definitely a vocal piece of the market that's saying that private equity style investments are not right for your average retail investor. And that's reporter Annie Massa. You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. Coming up, a look at how the coronavirus is hurting factory production in China. This is Bloomberg.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube
and decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling,
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of Off-Peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
£1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
Give same old a shake-up. Give it some gusto. Give your 4-dish repertoire the 40-dish treatment with all
the ingredients you need delivered to your door. Give it new flavors to try, like creamy haddock linguine with tomato and chili. Give everybody a hearty plateful from just £2.98 each. Give it weekly dinners sorted. Go on, give it some gusto. Visit gusto.co.uk today and get 50% off your first box. Subscription auto-renews, cancel anytime.
Switch to Sky Broadband Superfast. It's so reliable, we'll guarantee your speed or money back. It's £27 a month for 18 months with a £19.95 setup fee. So stay connected with reliable Sky Broadband Superfast. Switch or recontract today. Search sky.com. Prices may change during this period. Include Sky Pay As You Talk, Sky Fibre areas. Speeds vary by location. If speed drops below minimum download speed for 3 consecutive days, we'll refund 1 month subscription. Claim twice in minimum term after first 14 days. See sky.com/guarantee.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Listening to Bloomberg Radio. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
A push to ban sales of assault weapons has failed in the Virginia State Senate. In the end, Governor Northam lacks support from moderate Democrats. TJ Coutini has more on the story.
John, senators voted to shelve the bill for the year and asked the State Crime Commission to study the issue, an outcome that drew cheers from a committee room packed with gun advocates. 4 moderate Democrats joined Republicans in the committee vote rejecting legislation that would have prohibited the sale of certain semi-automatic firearms, including popular AR-15 style rifles, and banned the possession of magazines that hold more than 12 rounds. The bill was a top priority for Northam, a Democrat who's campaigned heavily for a broad package of gun control measures.
2 separate airliners have brought home 340 American passengers who had been quarantined over coronavirus fears on a cruise ship in Japan. 14 of those who returned have tested positive for the virus. China's central bank has rolled out more support for the economy to help businesses struggling with the fallout from the outbreak. I'm John Trout.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
So first came the trade war, now the virus, all of this playing into the Chinese economy, especially when it comes to manufacturers. Here with more on the impact as the virus spreads not just in that country, but potentially globally, is the editor of the economics section, Christina Lindblad. Hi.
Hi.
All right, so we spend so much time talking about, is this going to spread? What's going to happen? Meanwhile, back in this one province where it all started in China, what does it look like economically?
Well, that province, Hubei, is important to China's economy. It's about the GDP of that province alone is bigger than Poland's, but that province is not a big exporter onto itself. So what we looked at in our story is what is happening to China's industrial heartland, which is more on the East Coast. And there, it's been freezing. Like the disruptions are just sort of, like radiating through the country and then internationally. So at one point last week, 70% of China's productive capacity was offline because authorities had not allowed company owners to reopen. Now, we've been seeing this week gradually some places start to say you can go back to work. Of course, that is not possible for every company because a lot of them have their workers are stuck in their home counties because they went home for the Lunar New Year holiday and then faced quarantines and then travel bans. So even if today, local authorities said, it's okay, go back to work, because I think there is now this push in China to normalize, at least economically. It may be that we talked to one company, 90% of its workers, are from other provinces.
Wow. And remind us of the geography here. You mentioned it briefly, but we're talking about the Pearl River Delta, right? I mean, this is global supply chain, practically like global headquarters of global supply chain in many ways.
Pearl River Delta and a little bit wider, but yes, these are companies that are very embedded in global supply chains, which is not always the case for, the companies that are in the epicenter of the outbreak. So, I mean, there was a company we talked to in India that makes capacitors, and they were saying basically that they just haven't received any supplies from China that they need for parts. So they're going out to South Korean suppliers. But those companies also source from China, so their inventories are running down fast.
And so synthesize this with the trade war, because that was already sort of top of mind for the Chinese economy, obviously in the U.S. economy too, but there had already been, correct me if I'm wrong, sort of changes made to the supply chain to some extent, in a positive way, in a negative way. Like, how do we sort of put all this together?
Well, my concern, and I think where economists are going to be looking at, and there's not as much clarity as there might be for big companies, is small and medium-sized companies in China, because obviously they just don't have the deep pockets as some of the national champions do. And so there was a survey that came out recently of almost 1,000, and the owners of these firms said that they couldn't sustain 3 months of the kind of situation that they've been experiencing in the last few weeks. And about a third said they expect to see half of their revenues wiped out this year. You have to remember that for certain types of companies, this happened at a crucial time of the year, which would be equivalent to, let's say, the holiday shopping season in the U.S. So, I mean, there's no way to recoup those sales. They're not coming back, even if you were going to be able to open tomorrow. So I think that's where a lot of people are sort of feeling their way. What is going to be the impact on China's economy? I think a lot of the thinking is, if this is kind of quickly contained, there is going to be a bounce back in the second quarter, and by the second half of the year, we'll see a stabilization. Still, a lot of people are coming around to the idea that it's going to be very hard for China to make a 6% growth rate, which is sort of originally where the government, had forecast was. So I think a lot of what we're going to be seeing this year is for people in the next few weeks and months, for people to be constantly revising those numbers about.
And so, speaking of the government, we spent a lot of time around this table over the years with you talking about the government's role. You mentioned national champions and the idea that the government really does get behind, especially some of the bigger companies, and support some of the smaller companies too. Yeah. Do we anticipate that the government is going to have to step in a more meaningful way to sort of prop up the manufacturing industry more broadly?
At this moment, what we're seeing is they're doing things, for example, is urging local governments to speed up issuance of this special type of bonds that is used for infrastructure spending. So, so there are things that were already in the pipeline and they're being moved up. So right now, we're not seeing giant new stimulus coming along, just kind of stimulus that was already there being advanced.
I'm with Christina Lindblad, the editor of the economic section of the magazine. Christina, another story from your section. It's all about inflation and monetary policy and its wide-ranging impact on all of us. A lot of people are talking about inflation lately. It's something top of mind, especially here at Bloomberg. Why are we so concerned about it now?
Well, I think a lot of it was a great deal of attention paid to the comments that Ken Griffin, the founder of Citadel Hedge Fund, made at the Economic Club of New York last week, in which he said we are totally unprepared for the return of inflation. And he's basically alluding to the fact that monetary policy in the U.S. and other places is so loose that it would be hard to quickly ramp up to contain, price pressures. And then some other people piped in saying, the death of inflation, is grossly exaggerated. Like, why are we writing these obituaries, So I think a lot of people are thinking they're not ready to write off the idea that there is inflation in the system, that this economic perennial thing, right? But then though, there's a whole other camp that's poo-pooed this as sort of like this, almost like a New Year's tradition. One person said, to start the year saying, this year is going to be different. This is the year where we're going to see a return of inflation. And certainly there are many factors that you could say would make this year actually be the one that we should be looking at, because we have in the US, in the UK, very tight labor markets, and those have traditionally been, kind of precursors. But there are a couple of other things going on. And one thing is the trade war, and the other one is coronavirus. And those two are disruptive to supply chains, which is another place where inflation can come up. I mean, if you're losing access to your regular suppliers, and all of a sudden, let's say in China, and all of a sudden you have to go to a South Korean company, well, a lot of other companies may be knocking on that firm's door. That's
your costs are going to go up.
Right. That's an opportunity for that company to put up prices.
Right. So we've been in a tight labor market now for, it feels like a pretty long time. How has that not played through yet? What do people say in terms of that lack of cause and effect that maybe we've seen thus far?
Well, I think, there is this kind of ritual now where the monthly job numbers come out and they're like gangbusters. Once in a while they're not, but mostly, certainly the most recent one, surprise on the upside. So there's this, there's this like, wow, how is this not affecting prices? But, you have to remember that wage gains have come late in this more than 10 years.
They were essentially non-existent
for a long time. And they're not, and wages, are still not growing that strongly. Like in December, there was actually a blip in which we saw a break in this sort of trend in which they had been growing, modestly, right? So that's one factor. And also, it's like, it could be that companies are choosing to swallow, price increases from suppliers and sacrifice some margins. Although, I haven't seen studies about how widespread that is. So in a world in which comparison shopping for all sorts of things is so easy, businesses are more reluctant, I think, to put up prices. Some people have alluded to this mentality that you have in Japan, where like even convenience stores, are just completely freaked out by the idea of having to mark anything up because, people will just go to like the rival down the street.
Right.
So I think that mentality writ large, is a factor. And also, so we looked at market measures of inflation, of anticipation, and basically, we don't really see anything in the large majority of investors feeling that anything surprising is around the corner. I mean, inflation has been tracking closer to the 2% target that is the Fed's target. But, Clarida said recently that they're not
the vice chairman of the Fed,
right? Yeah. That they're not ready to say we're at full employment. I mean, this, was something that happened in 2018, where the Fed came basically decided the economy was at full employment. Yeah. And that we were above 4% at that point, unemployment, and then they started hiking rates. This mistake is not going to happen again.
No, certainly not in an election year.
Right.
And certainly not in the current
when they're
environment.
Even more cautious about moving around the exchange.
Well, and meanwhile, anecdotally, I feel like we all talk about this idea that, yes, while there are no good gauges that prices are going up, housing prices continue to rise, at least in certain, parts of the country. So it doesn't, for the average person, it just doesn't quite square, right?
It's true. I mean, I think for a lot of people, housing prices is what they feel strongly. But, if you look at prices, gasoline, other things, that are in the basket and the consumer price index, they're not going up.
And that's editor Christina Lindblad. That wraps up the first hour of the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio. I'm Jason Kelly. Plenty for you in our next hour. We've got a continued focus on the impact of the coronavirus. We're going to look at a little-known coalition based in Norway that's trying to develop a vaccine and a template to deal with future crises like this. Plus, a conversation with Michael Ainsley. He's the former chairman of Lehman Brothers. He takes us inside the room on that fateful day. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
The moment you realise that radiator isn't warming up, it's chilly in London and half the class are coming for a sleepover. The moment you realise you've got British Gas home care boiler cover from 46p a day, including parts and labour. So the moment you have a problem, make it our problem. And if you buy selected home care products online by the 24th of February, you'll get a gift card worth up to £75 to treat yourself. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
Oh my days, it's storming the charts at 169.
And last over the line, number 169.
You're 169 in line to the throne.
The number 169 never screamed going places until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go, Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months, £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of March 2020. £3,311.25p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Gun ban rejected. Americans repatriated. I'm John Trout. A push to ban sales of assault weapons has failed in the Virginia State Senate. Governor Northam lacks support from moderate Democrats. TJ Kutzini has more.
John, Senators Commission to study the issue, an outcome that drew cheers from a committee room packed with gun advocates. 4 moderate Democrats joined Republicans in the committee vote rejecting legislation that prohibited the sale of certain semi-automatic firearms, including popular AR-15 style rifles, and banned the possession of magazines that hold more than 12 rounds. The bill was a top priority for Northam, a Democrat who's campaigned heavily for a broad package of gun control measures.
340 Americans who had been quarantined over coronavirus fears on a cruise ship in Japan are back in the U.S. To contain the virus, Chinese banks have been laundering money. Literally.
Chinese banks are now cleaning and quarantining old banknotes, paper money. Bills from the most hard-hit virus areas, such as Wuhan and the Hubei province, are cleansed and sanitized with ultraviolet rays or heat, then locked up for 14 days before it can be recirculated. Chinese banking officials say currency in less riskier areas will be quarantined for about a week and cash from hospitals and food markets separated out. I'm Jim Roop.
Over 1,000 former DOJ staffers are calling on the Attorney General to resign.
Last week, Barr's interview with ABC News included a call for the president to stop tweeting about pending cases, most notably Mr. Trump declaring Roger Stone facing 7 to 9 years in prison was an injustice that he cannot allow. On Fox News Sunday, advisor Kellyanne Conway arguing the president wasn't trying to influence the Attorney General regarding Stone.
Well, you see how the president weighs in. The president weighs into the whole world. He didn't have a conversation with Bill Barr about the Roger Stone case. He had a conversation with the whole world.
Bob Costantini, the White House.
The New York Stock Exchange, as well as most government offices, are closed this President's Day. I'm John Trout.
When we adopted Buddy, who is a lab, we didn't know that he can't eat like a normal dog. He has to eat with sit-ups that just put him down. His life expectancy maximum is 3 years. Well, he's 6 years old now, and I attribute most of that to Dynovite and a lot of love. DINOVITE.com. I heard about Dynovite on the radio and started mixing with his food, and it's changed everything. Dynovite is nutrition. Yes, he has a nice shiny coat. Yes, it helps with keep. A good, healthy weight on him. He's happy, he's healthy, and he's going to be with me for a long time because of Dynovite.
Dynovite for life.
We take him to the vet now, and they can't believe it. I love my dog. I want him happy and healthy, so I give him Dynovite.
You won't believe how happy your dog will be.
I get my Dynovite from DINOVITE.com.
Democratic presidential candidates are campaigning ahead of the Nevada caucuses. Former Vice President Joe Biden, who came in 5th in the New Hampshire primary and 4th in the Iowa caucuses, discussed his chances of becoming president with NBC's Meet the Press.
South Carolina is it, isn't it? I mean, you have to win that.
Well, I think you have to do really well in it. But
What's really well? Is there such thing as doing well without winning for you?
Well, I think so. But look, it's right after that, on March the 4th, we end up with going into all the states, which the polling data is now showing me, doing incredibly well. Whether it's North Carolina or Georgia or Texas or any of those other places.
General Motors says it's pulling out of Australia, New Zealand, and Thailand as part of a strategy to exit markets that don't produce adequate returns on investments, dismaying officials concerned over job losses. I'm John Trout.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. This newscast is brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university in the latest U.S. News and World Report college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Japan's gross domestic product shrank at an annualized pace of 6.3% from the previous quarter. In the 3 months through December, Japan may be slipping into recession after a sales tax hike in the last quarter left it at a low ebb just as the coronavirus outbreak hit activity at the start of 2020. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe may have to consider new stimulus spending to promote growth. With U.S. financial markets closed for President's Day, European stocks are gaining in Monday trading after Chinese shares advance, with investors encouraged by China's pledge to support its economy in the face of the coronavirus outbreak. In London, the FTSE 100 gaining about 0.25%, the DAX in Germany up 0.2%, the CSI 300 in China advanced 2.25%, the Nikkei in Japan, though, was down 0.7% after that dismal GDP report. S&P 500 stock index futures ahead by about 0.2%. Dow Jones reports that the Trump administration is weighing new trade restrictions on China that would limit the use of American chip making equipment as it seeks to cut off Chinese access to key semiconductor technology, according to people familiar with the plan. Cannabis stocks are wallowing near all-time lows, but the amount of capital raised in that space is coming back, as we hear from Bloomberg's Denise Pellegrini.
Pot companies raised $1.2 billion of capital from the beginning of the year through February 7, and that compares to $886 million in the same period last year, according to Viridian Capital Advisors. Viridian also says the growing availability of debt-based Project-based financing seems to be driving the increase. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio.
Hello, I'm Jason Kelly. My co-host Carol Masser is off this week. Plenty ahead for you in this hour of the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week, including a conversation with former Lehman Brothers chairman Michael Ainsley. He takes us inside the room where it happened. Plus, why the biggest fan of President Trump's steel tariffs is suing over them. But first, as the coronavirus continues to be the biggest story of the week, one Norwegian-based coalition is looking for a vaccine. Economics editor Peter Coy joins us now with that story. Peter, the virus, it's the first big test for the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, CEPI for short. Where did this group come from?
Well, back when we had the Ebola outbreak in 2014, governments had been working on funding a vaccine for the Ebola. It had been known about since the 1970s, but nothing had ever been done. No company had taken the baton and gone out and developed a vaccine because, look, outbreaks are fairly rare. The people who would be vaccinated are quite poor, can't really afford a vaccine. So the private market just wasn't doing the job of protecting people from Ebola. So they looked at us and said, we're going to have other viruses striking. We need to have a plan. So at Davos, the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Switzerland in 2016, the idea was conceived. They went back to the drawing board, and then a year later went ahead with it. So it's headquartered in Norway, of all places, which has had 0 cases of the coronavirus so far. So it's only 3 years old, 68 employees. So in one way, it's very small. In another way, it's very big because of its power to coordinate, as you said, a lot of different players. The research team, community, that would include the boutique researchers on vaccines, as well as the big manufacturers who need to be able to work together, governments supplying funds, regulators, so that we can speed these new vaccines through the regulatory process. It's sort of like providing a needed coordination function.
Well, and what's so interesting, you point this out in your piece, is that there obviously is an element of this that is medical and biological. Yeah. This is largely organizational, right?
Precisely. I actually liken it to sort of a societal immune response. In the same way the body produces antibodies against a virus,
I love it.
Society produces new structures to fight outbreaks.
Yeah. And because of the world we're living in, those need to be pretty complex, those organizations, pulling together all of those different elements that you describe. How optimistic are people that this is working or can work?
I talked to Dr. Richard Hatchett, the executive director for the article, and he's thinking now it'll take 12 to 18 months before a vaccine is ready. Mm-hmm. Sounds like a long time, except it used to be like a decade or more to create a vaccine. So this is like running a lot of processes in parallel that would normally be done one at a time, getting everybody on board, making sure there are no glitches and no hitches, everything happens. So it may not even happen that fast. He said he's almost reluctant to give a date because it could be wrong. But while that might seem like a long time, it's going to be too late for the people in this initial outbreak. If this coronavirus is as bad as some people fear it will be, the vaccine will be crucial for future outbreaks, or the possibility that this virus never goes away. It just becomes endemic in the population like the common cold.
Right. Well, and also this element of every time something like this happens, whether it's SARS or Ebola or something else, there is, looking at them sort of an academic perspective, something to be learned, right? In terms of reaction, in terms of all these different stakeholders and their actions and the speed of their actions and coordination.
I hate to be ghoulish, but in some ways, an outbreak is an opportunity.
Right.
Because you can't test a vaccine against a disease in which nobody has it, right? It's only when people have contracted it that you can introduce the vaccine to people who are not affected to see if they are protected from it. So that's why you take advantage of this terrible event to try to create and test a vaccine that will protect other people from it.
Well, and as you say, we are talking about ultimately people here. We're talking about human behavior, and you can't model that so well. Even the most advanced artificial intelligence still is ultimately artificial in terms of determining how humans are going to react. You know, even thinking about something as small an example of how cruise ships are sort of playing a part in this whole current crisis, you know, cruise ships trying to port in different places and governments having different reactions and all of those sorts of things just goes back to the complexity of all the stakeholders here.
Well, so the Hatchet would say the efforts to isolate people, protect from the current outbreak, the main reason for that is just trying to slow down the advance of this disease until the vaccine can come in, like the cavalry riding over the ridge to the rescue. Once there's a vaccine, then we actually have hope of arresting this thing.
Right. You know, one of the things that your piece calls to mind, Peter, thinking about sort of your body of work, as it were, is this does require a level of coordination that maybe in today's world, as small as it feels, is a little more complicated.
Yeah, you know, on a medical level, there's been an enormous amount of cooperation.
Interesting.
The Chinese scientists immediately supplied scientists all over the world with the data they needed to start working on vaccines. Scientist to scientist, the cooperation, the globalization is still there.
Right.
Whether that carries over to coordination between countries, as you gave the example of the cruise ships, is not so clear.
Yeah.
But that's why CEPI, as it's called, Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, can try to knit together people who might otherwise be going off in different directions.
That's economics editor Peter Coy. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, JSW Steel executives, they were thrilled when President Trump announced tariffs on steel and aluminum until they realized the tariffs would also apply to their own company. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. When the question is tea or coffee, it seems coffee is winning. In the UK, almost 900 million fewer cups of tea were drunk over the 12 months through May of 2018, according to trade publication The Grocer, to the point that Lipton owner Unilever is weighing the sale of that tea portion of its mammoth business. Unilever's following a consumer shift to coffee as the primary source of caffeine, with coffee shops proliferating from London to Beijing. Starbucks boss Kevin Johnson doesn't see the trend slowing.
We can build new stores and grow, for the rest of my lifetime. China. It is that big of an opportunity.
Luxury tea maker TWG founder Taha Bokdib says, meanwhile, he's expanding his reach.
Definitely the target will be the U.S. because the U.S. it's a market that is extremely different from all over the world. Means we must be there ready. We must go big.
In the UK, apparently those who don't drink coffee favor herbal alternatives over traditional tea. Greg Jarrett, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine. I'm Captain Obvious, and every day people book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like. A hate like is when you like Becky's picture of another waterfall, even though you kind of hate it, because she's there and you're on the train next to a mouth breather. Don't hate like Becky's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com. Hotels.com. Be there, do that.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage. Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella. Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
So in this week's issue, it's a tale of one steel company totally in favor of President Trump's tariffs until it wasn't. Here to explain his story, Joe Doe. He covers the commodity space here at Bloomberg. This is quite a tale. How'd you get turned on to this?
So Brian Gurley, the reporter who is the head byline on this, came to me a few months ago, maybe 3 months ago, and said, had you heard about this whole story? I said, I have actually, and I told him a year before I'd been sitting in a conference room in Chicago at an industry event, and John Hritz, the CEO of JSW Steel, was up there, and he basically said, I got $1 billion investment from corporate, which is back in India for JSW Steel.
Yeah.
Essentially because of the Trump administration passing these tariffs, and I could not be happier about the tariffs. Flash forward.
He did everything short of like wearing a MAGA hat at that point, right?
Pretty much, right? I mean, listen, John's a straightforward. He will tell you he's a supporter of these tariffs. He's a supporter of the president. He's been in photo ops with the president many times before. Fast forward to August, and we get a thing on the wire that says that they're suing the Trump administration. And Brian says, we got to write this story.
Yeah. So how do you unpack something like, I mean, do you just pick up the phone and call this guy? What happened?
Yeah, the first thing I did was I actually had run into him recently and said, I'd like to chat with you more about this case if you have the time. And, we had a trouble kind of getting to him. And finally, after various calls and, jumping through various hoops, they said, come on down and see us in Mingo Junction out in Ohio. And so we did that right before the holiday break. We sat down with John. He told us what was what. He ran us through everything and said, listen, it's basically we're putting in new facilities. We're putting in new mills. We're investing $1 billion, or we're hoping to invest $1 billion so that we can be self-sufficient making steel slabs and turning them into pipe. Down in Baytown, those pipes obviously would be supplied to the energy industry.
Yeah.
So they thought in the meantime, they could just import the slabs from their parent company in India. And ultimately, the Commerce Department said, no, we're not going to let you do that. And so you get their argument, right? They're like, well, we're investing this money because the whole point of the tariffs was to do that. And in the meantime, so we're not losing money, we'll be able to import for free. And a big part of that is they're saying they're actually losing money right now because they're paying the tariffs to import,
right?
Which means that $1 billion investment is looking down more at the $350 million investment. And there's serious questions as to whether or not they're actually going to follow through with all of the build out that they were going to do at these two mills in Texas and in Ohio.
All right. So take us to Mingo Junction. Like take us to the field because, or take us into the field, I should say, because part of what this sort of reporting really helps us understand, especially candidly, we're sitting here in New York City.
Yeah.
We don't really understand fully until we go what it actually looks and feels like. What are people saying? What are they feeling there?
So it is this hill town. I mean, we write the story, right? The Ohio, you come out of West Virginia into Ohio because we flew into Pittsburgh, we drove out of Pennsylvania through a part of West Virginia, we pull into Ohio, and then all of a sudden there's this valley, right? There's this river, the Ohio River is just right there, and you kind of drive down the Ohio River for a few miles, and you're basically in this old steel town, right? I mean, this town was actually viewed in The Deer Hunter, right? So all the guys are coming out of this old steel mill, which is where the current steel mill sits, it's entirely different, but there it is, right? You think of the Deer Hunter. I've been to a lot of steel mills. This one, it's an EAF, so it's a mini mill. They use scrap and they remelt it and turn it into steel. But it had very clearly not been operating for a while. Mm-hmm. And I've heard about this mill in my other reporting where people say, yeah, this mill, it's gotten up and then it hasn't really produced and it's been too costly. But we show up and they take us on a tour through the mill, right? And the thing that struck me is when we walked into the area where the slabs were sitting, so literal, just massive, just bricks, like, just the size of the side of a building, just sitting there laid on top of each other. You could still feel the heat emanating off the steel. The room where they were sitting was just a dirt floor. And when you go to the back of the room, because I said, can we go further back? There was just a bunch of junk metal sitting around. Yeah. Just scrap metal sitting there. I said, well, what is this? And the guy said, this is just a lot of the parts that we found over the past year and have put off to the corner since we've restarted the mill. Some of it could probably be used, as parts. Most of it will be scrapped because, listen, any steel, whatever it is, it's got value. Yeah. Somebody sees value in that steel. So that's what, and then you walk out of the mill, right? And you're very much just in this town with, there's a few, spots of homes on the hillside, and it feels very, middle America, right? Blue collar. We went into the town and met a couple of the store owners. It's not much though, right? It's a very small town, and it's not even 45 minutes outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but you feel like you're a world away from it.
Right. And is the feel in the town that things are going well with the mill, or TBD?
Well, listen, they're happy the mill's back, right? And this is the truth of anybody who's gotten back to work in steel. They're happy that jobs are back. And you're talking about telling someone there is no job and the mill is done and it's never coming back to, it's actually there. And I think the feel was, this is great that it's here. Let's see what they can really do with it. Our hope is, they'll stick to their promise and they'll be able to make money and keep it open. Because the whole idea is they're going to ship, if they get it operating the way they want it to, they ship it down the Ohio River into the Mississippi, and then on down to Texas. I mean, it's kind of the lifeblood of American metal here in the United States, especially in the East Coast.
And so that's how it's supposed to work. That's how it was designed.
Yeah.
And yet it gets really complicated. Where does it sort of go, pun intended, like off the rails a little bit?
It's the tariffs.
Yeah.
So they're still importing all of this slab from India, right? So they have the shipping costs to get it from India, and then they have to pay a 25% tariff on top of that. So right now they're essentially a re-roller where they just get metal and they re-roll it into the stuff that goes into infrastructure or goes into automobiles or whatever it might be. But it's that simple. That cost, the shipping plus the tariff makes it unprofitable and makes it very difficult for them to follow through with this plan that they had.
So what's the argument on the government side?
Well, the government's saying, listen, we wrote it in stone. You get tariffs if you're importing foreign steel, and we've had enough steelmakers in the United States say they can supply you with the slab in the meantime.
Right.
So they had been filing these exemptions to the Commerce Department, and companies like Nucor and U.S. Steel, who we know very well, were saying, actually, Commerce Department, we can supply them with what they need. Of course, JSW Steel saying it's not that easy. They're saying they have far more steel they can supply than they actually produce in a year. And that's where you kind of get in the back and forth.
And that's reporter Joe Doe. Love talking to him. He knows this space so well, and this story is far from over. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, forget Tough Mudders. You need to try Everesting. It's a thing. That's in our Pursuit section. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast, all on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
TSB's Fix and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000. Subject to status, UK residents only over 21. Based on de facto data, January 2020.
You want to turn that tap off, don't you? That's because we all know that wasting isn't smart. And yet, as a nation, we waste electricity every day without knowing it because our energy system is outdated. Smart meters not only help us stop wasting energy at home, they'll also help build a more efficient energy system so we can reduce waste across the nation. From the campaign for a smarter Britain.
Consumer action required for personal savings.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Send message to Elise. Salut, sorry, I'm running late. Just in the car now. Send. I forgot the cake. Send. Actually, great news. SatNav has found a new route. See you in 10.
Message on the move in the Citroen C1 and stay connected. Experience Citroen C1, available from £149 per month with initial rental of £149.
Citroën.
Please drive responsibly. Citroen UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. Personal lease. You will not own the vehicle. Offer on fuel VTI 72.5 speed manual. 6,000 miles per annum. Guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility criteria and return conditions apply. PSA Finance UK Limited.
Now the news. The 340 Americans who were flown to military bases in the U.S. overnight from Japan are in quarantine in Texas and California this morning. Correspondent Jim Roop is following developments.
Stranded on board the Diamond Princess for 10 days.
We cannot leave our cabin.
That's Carl
Goldman, who along with his wife, while on a 16-day cruise through Southeast Asia, found themselves stuck on that ship as passengers were diagnosed. And finally today, back on American soil, but again quarantined for another 14 days. 14 of the 380 have tested positive for coronavirus. They are isolated from the others. We're told, however, none are showing symptoms of the illness.
Members of his own party have for now killed Virginia Governor Ralph Northam's efforts to ban the sale of assault weapons. 4 moderate Democrats joined with Republicans in a state Senate committee vote this morning to delay the bill by a year. It would have banned the sale of some semi-automatic firearms. I'm Christopher Cruz.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. This newscast is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the 6th straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. Wall Street has the day off in observance of President's Day. European stocks are on the rise after Chinese shares advanced, with investors getting a lift after China's central bank unveiled plans to reduce corporate taxes and fees to help combat the coronavirus outbreak. In London, the FTSE 100 gaining 0.2%, the DAX in Germany up almost 0.2%, the CSI 300 in China gaining 2.25%. Japan's Nikkei fell 0.7% after data showed the country's economy shrank last quarter by more than 6%, the biggest drop in 5 years. International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva told Bloomberg Television that the most likely scenario for the coronavirus would be relatively rapid containment followed by economic recovery.
We are still hoping that the most likely scenario would be relatively rapid containment of the virus, a V-shape drop in economic activities in China, some impact on the rest of the world, and then very fast recovery.
Tensions increased between the U.S. and NATO allies on Sunday when U.S. Ambassador to Germany Richard Grenell tweeted that President Trump had instructed him to make clear that any nation who chooses to use an untrustworthy 5G vendor risks jeopardizing intelligence and sharing with the U.S. at the highest level. The comment on Twitter seemed specifically aimed at Huawei Technologies, although Grenell did not mention the Chinese company by name. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
Every new watch is like a new piece of art.
The Italian wines as a whole really speak to that quintessential need.
It is the most powerful car made in the U.S., period.
You get the beautiful interior, the iconic design.
It's very chic and posh.
Even if you pay for it, it's something that money can't get.
So I'm just going to say it, one of my favorite stories in the magazine this week. It also was one of the most read on the Bloomberg. Scaling Mount Everest in Vermont. Wait, what? Well, we're going to get into it. Andrews Mellon, he wrote it, he did it. Here to tell us about it in New York City. Hello.
How are you?
All right. How do you get an idea like this? How do you get the idea to even think about this?
It kind of came across my desk, and I thought it sounded a bit too weird and funny to pass up an opportunity to check it out, because I had the same reaction. Climbing Mount Everest in Vermont, what's going on here?
And the guy who's behind all this is named Jesse Itzler. Well known in some circles. He most famously, in some ways, or most publicly, literally had a Navy SEAL move into his house and then wrote a book about it, a New York Times bestseller. This is a pretty accomplished guy.
Very much so. He's a serial entrepreneur. He was a rapper early in his career. Then he founded a private jet company that Berkshire Hathaway bought in about a decade ago. And since then, he's been an investor. He's helped build and sell a couple of companies, and now he is a life coach. And essentially runs a life coaching program. And this Everesting challenge is part of that.
All right, so take us to Vermont. What's entailed here? First of all, it costs $4,000.
It does. So it's a pretty penny just to go on a really long hike up the ski.
A really long series of hikes in many ways. All right, so you arrive and you sort of show up as like, I'm a reporter, I'm just going to sort of chat with people, but you're also a very accomplished athlete in and of your own right, so you got sucked in.
I did, yeah. I showed up in Stratton Mountain in Vermont, where this event took place in October, which essentially entails that you hike up a ski slope. It's a black diamond ski slope, and then you take the gondola down, and then you repeat that 16 times, 17 times in total. And then by that time, the altitude that you've gained equals Mount Everest. So you've effectively climbed Mount Everest, but without the oxygen tanks. And
Right, 29,000 feet.
Yeah,
a little over.
Yeah.
Why? Why do people do this?
So that's what I asked dozens of them out there on the course. There were about 200 of us that did this over 36 hours. Everybody had a slightly different answer. Some people were there because many were mid-career and kind of felt a bit of a life crisis. But many just simply said that, I'm very accomplished professionally, and I like my life the way it is, but, I don't really have these things when I get out and really test my limits physically. So one guy told me that, you almost have to manufacture these insanely hard things for yourself, and I think they sharpen you.
Right. And and this is of the moment in many ways, and you and I have spent a lot of time off air talking about our various pursuits in this regard. You're a very accomplished swimmer, runner, all of these different things. What was it like for you physically? You're in unbelievable shape. This was still pretty hard.
I used to be in good shape when I was still a swimmer, but that was years ago. But I showed up there, hadn't really planned on doing the whole thing. I figured I would scale 2-3 times with them and just get the feel for it. But then I showed up and realized that I was, out of the 200 participants, I was pretty much the youngest person there. And then felt compelled to,
those
get my act
competitive
together.
Juices never quite leave you, do
know
they,
how it
Anders?
is.
Yeah,
You know
absolutely.
So I was very underprepared in terms of equipment. It had rained, and it was windy and cold, and I was wearing running gear and just a couple of sweaters and a beanie, but got a hold of a couple of ski poles and decided that, let's try it. And ultra events and ultra endurance events are a bit different than even a marathon, where that it starts grinding on you after a while.
Yeah.
But it takes about roughly an hour plus for the average person to scale the mountain once, and then you do that 17 times, which means that it's a lot of time that you spend on your feet. So it's this low intensity exhaustion that builds up. It just it wears you down over time.
Well, it sort of strips away everything, right? And that's part of the reason that people do it is we've all got all these things going on in our minds. We've got all these plans, all these feelings and emotions and whatnot, and there's really nothing in front of you except the mountain and the next step and the next step and the next step. That's part of the appeal.
Yeah, after a while it gets hard to really think about anything else but just one foot in front of the other, because you get so exhausted, but you still got to keep going.
And it's not a race, or is it?
No. Like many endurance events, this is finishing is the goal, and everybody finishes at their pace and complete it at their own pace and in their own way. So which also brings out it creates a very supportive environment on the course, because you're not competing with other people. It's about finishing, and then everybody can rally around that and support each other.
And that's reporter Anders Mellon, an incredible athlete, and as you heard, couldn't help himself once he got a chance to Everest. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, a conversation with Michael Ainsley. He's the former chairman of Lehman Brothers. Tune in for that. This is Bloomberg.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Do you go on the same holiday every year? To the same country, in the same hotel, with the same sea view, visit the same ancient monuments, lay by the same dolphin-shaped pool, meet the same Barrys and Sandras, and wear the same Hawaiian shirt that you'd never wear at home? Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Stace, are you ready yet? Have you seen the Butlins lineup? I was born ready. We're going big tonight. Raxu then Brainiac live.
Those experiments will blow the boys' socks off.
They're wearing flip-flops, Joe, not socks.
Oh, dance shoes tomorrow, though, for the Diversity Dance Academy. I am going to throw some shapes.
Are you sure about that?
Well, it's a lot easier when you're not on ice.
Well, if anyone could teach you to dance, it's going to be Diversity. Come on, we're going to be late.
For an exciting family break to Butlins this Easter, book online now. Are you ready to Butlins?
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Tonight, it's Chelsea v Man United in a true meeting of giants. And with Now TV, you can watch all the action live for a one-off payment of just $9.99. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed. It's $9.99.
We've got a game on our hands now. So, to only pay for the games that matter to you, grab a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet. Full terms apply.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Bloomberg Radio. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
The 340 Americans who were flown to military bases in the U.S. overnight from Japan are in quarantine in Texas and California this morning. Correspondent Jim Roop is following developments.
Stranded on board the Diamond Princess for 10 days.
We cannot leave our cabin.
That's Carl Goldman, who along with his wife, while on a 16-day cruise through Southeast Asia, found themselves stuck on that ship as passengers were diagnosed. And finally today, back on American soil, but again quarantined for another 14 days. 14 of the 380 have tested positive for coronavirus. They are isolated from the others. We're told, however, none are showing symptoms of the illness.
Members of his own party have for now killed Virginia Governor Ralph Northam's efforts to ban the sale of assault weapons. 4 moderate Democrats joined with Republicans in a state Senate committee vote this morning to delay the bill by a year. It would have banned the sale of some semi-automatic firearms. I'm Christopher Cruz.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
There are some individuals who live a life that often finds them in the center of high-profile events. That includes Michael Ainsley. He has done so many things and found himself really at moments in our history.
Well, we talk so much about being in the room where it happens, of course, but so many rooms and some amazing places that he's been. He's got a new book out.
He does.
It's called A Nose for Trouble, and we're so delighted he's here with us in New York City. First of all, Michael, congrats on the book. Welcome back to Bloomberg.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So why do it?
You know, 2 reasons. I have a lot of young people that I care about. 5 kids, 8 grandkids, scores of Posse scholars that I've mentored over the years. I want them to know that life is not easy. There are a lot of bad things happen to all of us. And the question is, how do you deal with it? How do you learn from it? Where do you go next? So my nose for trouble got me into some difficulty every decade of my life. And I think I've made some pretty good choices afterwards. Second reason, there's a whole story about Lehman that's never been told. We were muzzled as directors for 5-6 years by the lawyers saying we couldn't talk. And I have views on that, the rest of that story.
Well, Jason and I would go through the galleys, and I think both of us were like, all right, where's the Lehman part? Because I do think you were in the room where it happened, when it came to the vote on whether or not Lehman should file for bankruptcy. Take us there.
It was incredibly scary. It happened so fast. We thought the Fed would continue to lend to us. We thought there might be a merger. And yet that weekend, it became clear the government was backing out. They were not going to do their job as a lender to financial institutions. And the biggest bankruptcy in world history was facing us. We considered not doing it. We said, let's see if they'll really flinch.
Right.
Will they lend tomorrow morning if we don't declare bankruptcy?
What a terrible game of chicken to be playing.
It was, if we had said no and they had said no, we'd probably all not be here right now. It would have been awful.
And so as you've had time to both think about it yourself, obviously you put a lot of it down in the book, as you've had a chance to talk to other people, what were those sort of catalytic moments, both in your boardroom and in Washington, that ultimately led to the fate of Lehman?
Well, Hank Paulson will not like my book, but he's got a tough skin. First of all, it was Bernanke's decision. The Federal Reserve is supposed to lend to financial institutions. They abdicated and turned it over to Paulson. Paulson made a political decision. It was not an economic decision. It was not based on Lehman's collateral. There was plenty of collateral there. I want to promote not only my book, but this book. This is by Lawrence Ball, the Dean of Economics at Johns Hopkins. This is the ultimate book about the Lehman bankruptcy. It's 200 pages of data and very, very thoughtful prose about what went on. And I really recommend that anyone that's serious about financial history take a look at Larry Ball's book. He's a very, very good scholar. In any event, we were left with no alternative. Did you realize that in the last week of Lehman's existence, our clearing bank, J.P. Morgan Chase, demanded and got $8.6 billion of our cash collateral to shore themselves up against Lehman possible losses? Well, they had the right to do that. Apparently, the fine print of their loan agreement let them do that because we lost that lawsuit 4 years later. However, it drained the liquidity out of Lehman. We were solvent until literally 3 or 4 days before the bankruptcy.
So why did it happen to Lehman? Why was Lehman the one firm that was allowed to fall?
Here's my explanation. We all know that AIG was much bigger than Lehman. If they had gone under, the world would have changed. AIG owed Goldman Sachs billions and billions of dollars for various commitments. In my belief, Paulson said, I can't get both done. I can't save Lehman and save AIG. And if I can only save one, I'll save AIG. And I think we were collateral damage. We had done nothing wrong. That's why nobody went to jail. The examiner's suit, the bankruptcy examiner said there's no colorable crime here, no colorable violation by either management or the board. But when the Fed closes its window, you can't function.
Michael, one of the things you talk about in your book, both explicitly and implicitly, is that ultimately these are people making these decisions. These are people with relationships, long-standing relationships, some good, some bad, and at the very least complicated. What do you make of the role that some of those relationships played in the ultimate demise of Lehman?
I think they were important. I think Paulson liked and was close to his successor at Goldman. He didn't like Dick Fuld. They had very contentious relations over the years. Lehman had stolen some of Goldman's best people. John Walker had just come over to run asset management for Lehman. Fuld had turned down a request to put a lot of money into long-term capital management back in the late 90s. We were asked to put in $250 million. Dick finally, very late in the game, put in $100 million for Lehman. Paulson was furious. Paulson felt Fuld wasn't trying hard enough to find a takeover partner or a merger partner. So there were a lot of frictions there.
Do you recall in those days leading up where there was the possibility that they could have been bought out, that there could have been a partnership or a combination that would have really changed the future of Lehman, that Lehman would still be around today?
The closest we came to a merger was with Barclays.
Right.
And that should have happened. The Chancellor of the Exchequer in London said, we won't give you a waiver of a shareholder vote. That killed the deal. But he could have done that, we believe, and that should have happened. And Barclays would be, some form of combination of Barclays and Lehman would still exist.
Were the American officials helping you in terms of that process as much as they could have? Because at that point, everybody had to come together because it was a global crisis.
I think they were. I think Paulson really did want to see that happen.
Okay.
The sad thing is that Alistair Darling, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, said, we don't want to import your cancer, not knowing that as soon as the bankruptcy occurred, London's Lehman operation, which was huge, would be bankrupt also.
Right.
So they did get the cancer.
Right. And you write about this in the book, Michael, sort of the aftermath, and obviously you've had some years to reflect on it as we've talked about. So, as a businessman, as a very successful businessman, as a human being, what do you take away from it? What do you internalize that either changes your worldview, changes your view of the financial system, changes your view of maybe the next crisis?
Less leverage. All the banks, we were right there with them. We were too leveraged. More equity.
So that's been a good thing coming out of the financial crisis.
I think it is.
And we should not be rolling back those regulations.
No. However, the Fed's ability to act has been severely restricted by Dodd-Frank. For example, and I only recently learned this, any refinancing that the Fed approves now has to be approved by the Secretary of the Treasury, which makes it back to politics.
Right.
I don't think that's a good rule. The Fed should focus on the banking system, not on the politics of the moment.
What about as a human being? What do you take away from it? Because that is a harrowing experience, as harrowing probably as anything from a financial or a business perspective that anyone's gone through in our lifetime.
You see those people carrying their boxes out. Like it's hard not to have an impact, right?
It's, you realize how many people were affected.
Yeah.
And I study economics. I love the field, and that's why I became a real fan of Lawrence Ball. He has done a study of the post 10 years after Lehman, of the 23 countries of the OECD. The growth rates in those countries are still dramatically suppressed because of the Lehman bankruptcy. It's still hurting our world. Why do you think the German bond, 10-year German bond, is selling at minus 0.6 or whatever it is? Negative yield. The world's economies have not recovered today, 12 years later from the Lehman bankruptcy. That's why I think it was a huge policy mistake. I think Paulson should have fought to save, at least for the moment, wipe out all the equity holders, dilute, don't give the shareholders anything or next to nothing, but don't let this company go into bankruptcy.
That's former Lehman Brothers chairman Michael Ainsley. Really enjoyed our conversation, wide-ranging and going well beyond just Lehman. He was also the former CEO of Sotheby's. What an amazing career he has had. To hear the full conversation, download our Bloomberg Business Week Extra podcast. Well, that wraps up the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jason Kelly. Be sure to tune into Bloomberg Business Week Radio live Monday through Friday starting at 2 p.m. Wall Street time. And if you can't catch us live, get our daily podcast. Download that wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the show now live on YouTube every day. Just go to YouTube and search for Bloomberg Global News. Get this week's edition of the magazine. It's on newsstands now. We'll be back right here next week at the same time. This is Bloomberg.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Tonight, it's Chelsea v Man United in a true meeting of giants. And with Now TV, you can watch all the action live for a one-off payment of just $9.99. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed. It's $9.99.
We've got a game on our hands now. So, to only pay for the games that matter to you, grab a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet. Full terms apply.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Assault weapons ban fails. Back into quarantine. I'm Christopher Cruz. Members of his own party have for now killed Virginia Democratic Governor Ralph Northam's efforts to ban the sale of assault weapons. 4 moderate Democrats joined with Republicans in a state Senate committee vote this morning to delay the bill by a year. It would have banned the sale of some semi-automatic firearms, including AR-15 style rifles. The 340 Americans who were flown to military bases in the U.S. overnight from Japan are in quarantine in Texas and California this morning. They've already been isolated for almost 2 weeks on a cruise ship docked in Yokohama, where many people have been infected with the coronavirus. Correspondent Jim Roop is following developments.
Stranded on board the Diamond Princess for 10 days.
We cannot leave our cabin.
That's Carl Goldman, who, along with his wife, while on a 16-day cruise through Southeast Asia, found themselves stuck on that ship as passengers were diagnosed. And finally today, back on American soil, but again quarantined for another 14 days. 14 of the 380 have tested positive for coronavirus. They are isolated from the others. We're told, however, none are showing symptoms of the illness.
A CNN analysis finds that about half of China's 1.4 billion people are under some kind of travel restriction because of the coronavirus outbreak. Federal prosecutors said to be considering new charges against associates of President Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, in connection with a company that paid him $500,000. Correspondent Cara Scannell.
Sources tell us that prosecutors are considering charging Lev Parnas and at least one business associate of his with misleading potential investors in the company that paid Giuliani. That company was co-founded by Parnas and is called Fraud Guarantee.
General Motors is pulling out of Australia, New Zealand, and Thailand. The surprising announcement over the weekend said to be part of the company's strategy to exit markets that don't produce adequate returns on investments. I'm Christopher Cruz.
Sponsored by Bonner & Partners, LLC. Text and data rates may apply.
If you've been keeping an eye on the market, then you know that 5G technology is set to take over the telecommunications sector at any minute. High-speed internet that's 100 times faster than anything available now to enable companies to finally realize the potential of self-driving cars, remote surgery, plus the Internet of Things. China alone has over 1 billion mobile telephone subscribers. With most mobile manufacturers preparing to upgrade U.S. subscribers to 5G, that translates into a massive investment opportunity. The company that manufactures the key component that powers the 5G revolution is the cornerstone of the Near Future Report by analyst Jeff Brown that shows you the top tech stocks that will help you to invest in the early stages of the 5G revolution. Text the word tech to 76280 now to get the Near Future Report. We'll send you a link to your free video presentation directly to your mobile device or computer. Jeff Brown is the analyst who predicted the rise of NVIDIA. Text tech to 76280 to see the Near Future Report. Text the word tech to 76280.
The Pearl River at the Mississippi capital, Jackson, continues to rise this morning, and more rain is on the way, says meteorologist Gene Norman.
By the end of the week, we're looking at anywhere from 2 to 4 additional inches of rain scattered across the south. Also this morning, fog will be of concern. Dense fog advisories already being posted, and they're likely to expand.
It could be days before the waters start to recede. The days of heavy rain have forced the managers of dams in Mississippi and Tennessee to release more water, worsening for people living downstream. Gunmen shot and killed 24 people near a church in the West African nation of Burkina Faso yesterday. The 20 attackers separated men from women close to a Protestant church. Among the dead, the pastor of the church. Attacks have targeted religious leaders in the area in the past. Extremist violence has dramatically escalated in the once peaceful country. I'm Christopher Cruz.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom.
With U.S. financial markets closed for the President's Day holiday, global stocks mostly rose Monday, with Shanghai's benchmark jumping over 2% after China's central bank rolled out support for the economy to offset the effects from the coronavirus outbreak that has affected over 71,000 people globally. The London FTSE up about 0.25%, the DAX in Germany gaining just over 0.2%, the CSI 300 in China up 2.25%. The Nikkei fell 0.7% after Japan said GDP fell more than 6% last quarter, raising the specter of a recession in Japan. The World Trade Organization says global trade in goods will likely stay weak in coming months as disruptions from coronavirus in China staunch the movement of international commerce, already slowed by tariffs and uncertainty. Walmart reports quarterly earnings in the week ahead. Bloomberg's Susanna Palmer has a preview.
Bloomberg Intelligence says a solid holiday season should translate to same-store sales growth for Walmart that outpaces many peers. That's even with a difficult comparison versus a year ago and a shorter selling period between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Analysts expect same-store sales, excluding fuel, will have risen 2.7% at Walmart U.S. and 1.1% at Sam's Club. Walmart expects e-commerce growth in the fourth quarter to have been the lowest of the year, though the company is on pace to deliver about 35% e-commerce growth for the full year. Susanna Palmer, Bloomberg Radio.
Elon Musk's SpaceX launched its fifth batch of 60 Starlink satellites Monday morning, another step toward Musk's vision of creating a space-based network to provide broadband service around the world. Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president and chief operating officer, said earlier this month that SpaceX will likely spin out Starlink and sell shares to the public. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
Thank you so much for joining us for this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. The stock market is closed on this President's Day. Over the next hour, we will look at what's ahead for the U.S. economy and Federal Reserve monetary policy. But first, we look at this red-hot stock market and some of the biggest winners so far this year. We do that now with Dan Ives, Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. Always good talking with you, Dan. And what better company to start with than Tesla? This company's stock has been up more than 80% so far this year, and that's not even a record. Do you think the valuation settled down at this point, or is there more room for the bulls to run here?
I don't think settling down and Tesla you could use in the same sentence. But, look, I think it comes down to we are seeing an inflection EV demand globally, with Tesla leading the charge. And I think when you look at the valuation, I still think $1,000 bull case is really the best way to view it. It's going to continue to be volatile, but in terms of where we are in EV, it's still early days, and the company's really starting to see demand as well as production, with China front and center, really the catalyst.
Is that China demand really what's going to be driving Tesla's gains as we look in the months ahead? I mean, how crucial is that sector of the market for them?
China is the hearts and lungs of the Tesla growth story. And when you think about it, I mean, you're talking about a market that could be 5-6x what core U.S. is. And in terms of China, that's something where right now between Giga 3 and overall demand, that's really the fuel in the engine for the bull rally.
But of course, the big concern in China, Dan, is the coronavirus. I mean, that's still playing out in China. Does that risk still need to be priced in here?
Well, corona is a tragic and scary headline as well as outbreak. I think when it comes to Tesla, it's relatively contained in terms of how it's going to impact demand. I think we still need to see what the broader impact is. But in terms of Tesla getting to 150,000 units in China, this doesn't massively change that story. But it is a risk. I just think it's more contained at this point. It's on the street, sort of baked into the name.
In terms of the volatility we've seen in the stock over the last few weeks, we might have gotten more of that just last week with Tesla laying out plans for a $2 billion stock offering. I mean, are we going to see more gains and losses in the weeks and months to come?
The move last week in terms of the capital raise, I think it really shores up the balance sheet. And I think that it takes the doomsday scenario off the table in terms of cash. They have a ton of investments ahead. Definitely makes it more of an emotional bull bear story. But I ultimately view that as a smart move by the company and the board. It's going to continue to be a battleground stock But ultimately, I think we see in terms of the path right now probably going higher in terms of just ultimate demand and where we see it.
Of course, there are a lot of gainers in the tech space this year, and taking a look at one of the actual names in FANG, let's look at Apple, up more than 10% since the year began. Tim Cook's had a couple of great quarters. Does that trajectory continue for you?
In terms of Apple, I continue to think $400 stock by year end. This is one where if you look at the super cycle in 5G, combined with where the upgrade cycle is in terms of 350 million and 925 million overall iPhones worldwide in a window of an upgrade, I really think now we're going into just a massive transformation and a renaissance of growth for Apple, which is why we continue to be bullish on it, as well as the services being re-rated, which is key to the story.
This is another one with exposure to China as well. What risk does coronavirus pose for Apple?
I think a bit more risk in terms of relative to Tesla when you think about Apple, because when Foxconn and the core production manufacturing out of China, I think for every 7 to 10 days longer this goes on in terms of production shut, it could impact supply chain and essentially could take 1 million units off for the quarter from iPhone. But I view it as a timing. I don't view it as really changing our longer-term thesis on Apple or China, even though it's definitely a bit of a murky situation around Corona and the impact potential on the supply chain.
Now, the guidance that Apple put out for the current quarter came in above Wall Street estimates. What does Apple need to do to meet those expectations?
They gave a wider range. It's a range you could really drive a truck through, and I think part of that is because of Corona. Because right now, they're in the middle to the high end of the range in terms of where I think that trajectory is, maybe even exceeding it. The way they hit the low end is if the Corona has more of a broader impact, that's where it could hurt them.
Where do you see 5G taking effect for Apple?
I think it's a two-part 5G thesis. You start to see it in the fall when the 4 to 5 5G phones come out, and then into 2021. And I view it as it's a paradigm changer in terms of what we're going to see for growth, not just for Apple, but I think across really the food chain. And this is something where more investors are going to start to price this into the stock, which is why I think the stock's going to continue to really be up and to the right as we go into September and into the fall timeframe with these launches of iPhone 12.
And another one that's been up and to the right is Microsoft. Big gains on the year so far. Shares higher by more than 15%. The cloud business has been big for this one. Nadella
continues to have the golden touch in terms of cloud. I mean, Microsoft's our favorite cloud name. I could view it, when you look at cloud, $700 billion we believe is going to be spent in the cloud in the next 3 to 4 years. And I think Microsoft's leading that charge. Amazon continues to obviously be at the top of the heap in terms of cloud. I think Microsoft has real well-positioned to maybe win this next part of the cloud battle. You look at growth and renewed growth, what you're seeing on the install base, and you take a step back, it's probably one of the best transformation stories, if not the best transformation I've seen in tech covering 20-plus years in the street. And I still think the stock goes higher, 210, 215 in terms of where I think the stock can go.
All right, we want to continue this conversation with Wedbush Securities Equity Research Director Dan Ives. Coming up, the two biggest rivals in the ride-hailing business, that would be Uber and Lyft. It is 13 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The U.S. is in the middle of a substitute meat revolution. Faux meat giant Impossible Foods sells its plant-based patties at Burger King, White Castle, Qdoba, and more. Beyond Meat, which is worth nearly $7.5 billion, is sold at Subway, Denny's, Whole Foods, and beyond. The market for plant-based meat could reach $140 billion over the next decade. And with that in mind, Chipotle is now moving deeper into the alternative meat movement. It already sells a tofu-based item called sofritas, but now it's experimenting with new fare like cauliflower rice and maybe more plant-based meat alternatives made of black beans. Chef Neville Pantaki, Vice President of Culinary and Menu Innovation at Chipotle, says,
Our goal is to be relevant, and for us, part of the culinary team's mission is to explore and ideate and come up with some really unique ideas. Cauliflower rice and so many other things are so relevant.
Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
What am I saving for? My passion, food photography.
I trained to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website, 18 plus UK residents.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
Back to the special President's Day edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. The stock market is closed for the holiday. I'm Nathan Hager. Let's continue our conversation on tech stocks to watch now. Dan Ives, Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities, is back with us. Dan, let's turn to a couple of names that are just a few months out from their IPOs. Uber and Lyft, the two main competitors in the ride-hailing business. I want to start with Uber because it surprised a lot of folks on Wall Street with its latest guidance. Were you surprised by it?
Yeah, I think it was a game-changer quarter for Uber because of profitability and because what Dara and the team have done in terms of moving that forward. That was the biggest overhang on this name. You know, no one will doubt the growth in ride sharing and where Uber could take this. Profitability was the issue. And I think that was a big change, big step forward you've seen in the stock, and which is called like it is. I mean, since the IPOs, both Uber and Lyft, it's really been a nightmare for investors. But I think we're starting to come out of it, and Uber took a major step forward with their numbers.
Of course, this was a big shift up in the guidance on when they do expect to meet that profitability target. What do you think Dara Khosrowshahi and the rest of the firm need to do to meet those numbers?
A lot of it's going to be around Uber Eats. I mean, Uber Eats continues to be an overhang from a profitability perspective, and I think they're going to have to further rationalize that business. You've seen them selling off the India piece to Zomato, and I ultimately think it's a fork in the road on the Eats. It's either going to be rationalizing it, getting it smaller, potentially. I don't necessarily think shutting it down, but it comes down to profitability. that needs to be profitable. That's what investors are demanding. And I think Uber's listened. And I think that continues to be the biggest risk, along with EB5, the California legislation, when you think about Uber.
Is that something that's going to be tough for Uber to justify, keeping that kind of diversity in its portfolio without maintaining profitability?
I mean, for Uber, it's a balancing act because you look at the growth, you look at where the ride sharing is 2.5% penetration today. You look at Eats, you look at autonomous, and they have a lot of levers. But for them, you've seen with the stock, as a public company, it's managing that. Private, it's different. As they become public, investors put much more pressure on it, and you've seen it in the stock. So now they have to listen to that, and that's why the profitability and the balancing act is going to be key for Uber going forward.
Is Uber doing enough to rein in spending, do you think?
I think they've started it. They still could rein in more. I think they took a big step forward in terms of that profitability targets. They obviously have a lot of legal expense with the EB5 and some other issues. I think they're taking some major steps forward, but I think still some heavy lifting ahead.
Obviously, Lyft is going to be dealing with many of the same issues you talk about in terms of regulatory scrutiny in California and, of course, competing with Uber on that core business of ride-hailing. What does Lyft need to do to continue to differentiate itself?
Look, Lyft's domestic, and there's no Eats, and it's a simpler model, but I also think it's, from a competition perspective, going up against Uber, with needing to reduce sales and marketing costs, that's going to be the balance for them. I mean, Lyft needs to grow riders, grow revs, but do it in a profitable manner. I think the path is there for them. I would say in terms of the quarter and guidance, it was a B+. The street was expecting an A. I think Uber set a high bar, and you saw the sell-off in the stock accordingly. Still bullish on Lyft. I think right now it's just a little more of a prove-me story from an investor perspective, and a bit in the penalty box in terms of where they are because of not moving up that profitability forecast, because it's all about the P word right now, profitability. That's the key for rideshare to move these stocks higher.
I mean, so how's Lyft going to get to that A standard that you're looking for and the rest of the street's looking for when they got Uber, right next to them?
If you look at the growth dynamics, you look at ridership, they could be profitable pretty quickly. For them, it's just about holding it off in terms of some of the expenses and where ultimately they see it. And I think it can maybe contain growth in the near term, but ultimately that's what they need to do for this balancing act to get to where they can be, because you still look at overall penetration in ride sharing, it's low single digits, and that's the key.
You mentioned EB5. What other headwinds potentially do you see for ride sharing going forward?
I think EB5 is the biggest in terms of regulatory because of California and that very complex quagmire right now that's been introduced really to the gig economy. I think the other biggest risk is just that balancing act. It's very difficult when you're growing at these pace to then focus on profitability and please everyone, especially public investors. And if you look at ride-sharing players, they've essentially had to change their business model on a fly. Once they went public, investors spoke, and look what happened to the stocks. So anytime a business model is changing, it's very difficult, that balance, and you always worry about some execution risks. So I think those are probably the biggest risks.
In the time we have left, I want to take a look at one more tech stock that's been doing really well in 2020. Fortinet, the network security company, really has been on a tear since the middle of last year. What do you see behind the trajectory for this company?
I look at cybersecurity in terms of where it's going, in terms of Fortinet. They continue to be focused more and more on market share, and I think that's where Fortinet continues to be successful in terms of that company. And, I think ultimately you take a step back, you look at some of the secular growth areas, cybersecurity, cloud, and then even there's areas like healthcare cloud. There's companies like Nuance Technology, which has really started to what I view as take cloud to the next level on healthcare. And I think you've seen investors focus on it accordingly. So when I look on the cybersecurity side, Fortinet front and center as one of our core names in the sector.
What is it doing differently from some of its competitors in that space, like Cisco Systems, Palo Alto Networks? I mean, there is a lot of market share to be competed over.
No doubt from a market share, but if you look, they've been tacticians from execution, from product development, and from really stealing share versus competitors. And I think that's really been the success for Fortinet, for a stock that at one point was a little above driving age, and now you look at it, where it is today, well north of 100. So I continue to view Fortinet as a name that continues to move higher because of how they're positioned in a market that's growing 18 to 20%.
Our thanks to Dan Ives, Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. Still ahead on this President's Day edition of Bloomberg Daybreak, we take a look at some of the steps China may need to take to recover economically from the coronavirus. It's 25 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive this weekend. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Japanese officials have confirmed 99 more people infected by the new virus aboard the quarantine cruise ship Diamond Princess. More than 450 of the passengers are currently in quarantine. We get more from correspondent Lucy Kavanaugh.
We are now learning that 99 new people had tested positive for coronavirus on board the Diamond Princess, bringing the total number of infected passengers to 456. That is more than 10% of the population on board.
More than 300 Americans from that same ship are back in the U.S. 14 of them have tested positive for the virus. India's Supreme Court today ruled in favor of equal rights in the armed forces, ordering the government to grant permanent commission and command to women officers on a par with men. Former South African President F.W. de Klerk apologizes and has withdrawn a statement that the country's former system of apartheid was not a crime against humanity. I'm Mike Moore.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. With U.S. financial markets taking the day off for President's Day, European stocks climbed. U.S. stock index futures advanced, and shares in China gained sharply after the government pledged to support the economy in the face of the coronavirus outbreak. China's central bank unveiled plans to reduce corporate taxes and fees that helped to push up the benchmark CSI 300 index by 2.25%. In Europe, the FTSE 100 in London gaining about 1/3%, the DAX in Germany up 0.3%. Tokyo's Nikkei finished down 0.7% after a weak GDP report. And S&P 500 stock index futures are up just over 0.2%. The coronavirus will be high impact but short-lived, according to Oxford Economics' Louis Cao in Hong Kong. He says the next 2 weeks will be critical as Chinese consumers resume their daily routines.
As China starts to, go to the factories and the shops again, will they be able to contain the spread? We still assume that indeed it is going to be very high impact but short-lived, but we have to acknowledge that there are a lot of uncertainties around at the moment.
Dow Jones reports that the Trump administration is weighing new trade restrictions on China that would limit the use of American chip-making equipment as it seeks to cut off Chinese access to key semiconductor technology, according to people familiar with the plan. Pier 1 Imports says it has begun voluntary Chapter 11 proceedings. The company is engaged in discussions with multiple potential buyers. Pier 1 says it